Welcome, everyone, to EMDR Chat with Kurt and Michelle. I'm Dr. Curtis Rounzen.
And I am Dr. Michelle Gottlieb.
Well,
And we're
good day, Michelle. It's nice
good
to
day
see
to
you.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know, isn't it kind? We get to hang out together. It's a lot of
that's
fun.
that's
And
right.
we're hanging out with the guests today too.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're hanging out with Candace Leininger. Candace is not only a good friend and not only a trainer for our company, but she also has a couple of very interesting expertises. Expertises? One of them that we want to talk about today is working with people who suffer from narcissistic abuse. So these are not the narcissists. These are the people who are in a relationship with a narcissist and what that's like for them.
Candace has a book, and I always love the title, called Butterfly Killer: How to Identify and Manage a Narcissist, with tips for EMDR clinician on healing narcissistic trauma. Candace, I've always loved the title of that book. Why did you call it Butterfly Killer?
Well, hello, everybody. Glad to be here with you both and everybody who's listening. Um, Butterfly Killer actually came from a client who came to me, and she had a lot of insight. She had married and divorced the same man 3 times. Each time it ended the same way, where he would eventually find another woman, clean out her bank account, and leave, and she would divorce him. And she said, he's starting to come around again. He's starting to text me, and those butterflies are coming back. And
Oh,
I know I'm at risk. And our daughter is begging me, if he comes knocking at the door, don't open the door. And I know I will, because of those butterflies. He's the only man who's ever made me feel this way. But all I want is to be able to retire with my retirement funds intact, and my house with my garden and my pets. There's her future template. And
Mm.
mm-hmm.
I don't want to be at risk. And so we used what, you know, Miller's feeling state addiction protocol, or Jim Knipe's approach to killing those butterflies. And we targeted that positive feeling state of those butterflies going off until those butterflies no longer fluttered. We killed those butterflies and she was no longer at risk. And her ex husband did come knocking, and she didn't open the door because we were able to kill those butterflies.
Boy,
So
Wow, that's a cool
it really
story.
is a behavioral addiction, that love bombing can create in
Sure.
those
yeah.
relationships.
What do we, when you talk about narcissistic abuse, define that a little bit for the audience?
Sure, it's really an umbrella term that is gaining popularity, and I know a lot of people say, "Oh, this is just a buzzword." No, it really incorporates a lot, and our clients go through a lot. So it can look very different depending on the type of narcissist, or the type of narcissistic traits the person is in relationship with, and it covers a lot, from coercive control, love bombing, like I mentioned, intimidation, emotional blackmail, which is often that guilting, and manipulation that more kind of covert narcissists do, projection, abuse, verbal, emotional, psychological, even physical, gaslighting, dishonesty, exploitation, lack of empathy, neglect, and volatile behavior are all types of behavior these folks are enduring and surviving. So it is a real broad umbrella term that covers all of those types of situations, and be that relationship be a parent, a relative, a love interest, a boss, a sibling. It fits all those relationships.
In your
Gotcha.
book, you talk about the continuum of narcissism because not all narcissists look the same. So, would you kind of explain what that means?
So, being that this discussion is really in its infancy, and there's a lot of terms, like you can look up and you'll see 6 different types of narcissists, 8 different types of narcissists, and it's really it can get very confusing. And in my book, I really try to simplify it it moves away from the DSM diagnoses, to really looking broader at this topic. So we know folks with narcissistic traits. There are folks with full blown narcissistic personality disorder. And then a term that's gaining some momentum is narcissistic sociopath, or they also can be called the malignant narcissist or narcopaths. But that whole continuum of people with narcissistic type behaviors and personalities uh, are covered in that broad spectrum, that continuum of narcissism in my book.
Wonderful.
Um,
Now,
yeah.
what, also in your book, you mentioned atypical types. Does that fall under this continuum?
Atypical, actually, I mention it in the name of my advanced training that I'm going to be doing in person, um, coming up, and then virtual live, and then it will be on demand. The atypical traumas are our clients are not going to come in and call it trauma.
Yeah.
They're going to say things like, "I came from a loving family. My mother is a saint. Um, I'm in love with my soulmate." It really doesn't present, and their narrative, their either family narrative or relationship narrative, sounds like just perfection, where they're doing a lot of work in giving up their own identity to make that relationship what it is. They're an extension of their narcissistic parents, or just a shadow of them, trying to be perfect, or maybe they're the scapegoat, or in their narcissistic love interest relationship, they are just doing everything they can to please the narcissist. Or in an employment situation, they're letting their boss take the credit for their work. They're people pleasers. So they're lovely people who talk about the relationships in glowing terms, that once you dig deep and you give them some psychoeducation around narcissism, they start realizing, oh wow, this is my life. And often it is, they have their best friends a narcissist, their spouse, their boss, their parents. It's pretty pervasive in their life. And it's always, they think the common denominator is it's them. They're never good enough. They got to keep trying. Where the common denominator is they're in relationship with a lot of people with that, on that narcissism continuum.
And I can imagine, a couple of thoughts come up as you say that. One is, being raised in a family with that may have narcissistic tendencies, right? So they're kind of groomed, if you will, to continue to find these people, or those people find them. But the other thing that I think is important to remember, because we tend to think of narcissists as these, awful, mean, terrible people. They can often be very charming, and so it's like being seduced into this relationship.
Absolutely. Um,
Yes.
the right now, Dr. Ramini, who is a psychologist who has a great YouTube channel and talks, I think she's identified 8 forms of narcissists. I kind of lump them together into 3, but there's the grandiose, which is um, the the classic narcissist that the DSM describes. And that's the problem with the DSM. That's where it begins and it ends, is with
Right.
the grandiose narcissist. There is the communal narcissist. That is the person who everyone in society thinks they are like the best, you know, that's my mother's a saint. She volunteers all over the place. She stays late at work to help. She does all this, but we pay for it in our family by supporting that behavior and making her look good. And if we don't, we get guilted or punished in some way. Then there's the covert vulnerable narcissist, which is somebody who does a lot of woe is me, and also plays on that guilt. And it doesn't, the communal and the covert vulnerable narcissist do not look at all like your grandiose narcissist. And then you talk about charming, the malignant um, narcissist. Those are the scariest, in the sense that they are so charming. They
Mm.
have
Right.
so many people who just think they are like such a great person. that they would never believe the horrible things they're doing behind closed doors. And those are the people that tend to start dipping into that narcissistic sociopath type area. And then there's kind of benign and neglectful ones. And then there's something I really, it's not until recent research that I've done, I've seen about the generational or cultural narcissists. That is a part
Hmm.
of their culture to be narcissists, or oh, they're from another generation, they don't mean it. So there's, they kind of use that, their age, their generation, their culture to to perpetuate that narcissism.
Oh,
And
that's interesting.
those are people we kind of just give the pass to sometimes,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
don't look closely at. But you'll see those folks walk through your door also, and those are a little tricky because we have to, of course, honor their cultural differences while still educating them that this is toxic, and is integrates a lot of narcissism in their relationship.
And again, just to be so crystal clear, the narcissist is never walking through our doors. It's the person who's in the relationship with the narcissist.
Actually, the narcissist walks through our doors for a couple of reasons.
Huh.
And yes, you're right. They're not there for treatment. They are there to gain knowledge. They often learn psychological terminology that they can then weaponize against their victim.
Right.
That's
Right.
one reason. Um, if they want to look good, they'll go into, let's say, couples counseling. So they can say something like, well, look, I tried everything, even
Mm-hmm.
couples counseling. So they'll use it as a tool to get where they want to go. Um, and the third reason, and I've treated some narcissists relatively successfully. They are people who have come to a point in their life where they have some insight that their personality type is interfering with their relationships. I had a young soldier who was on his third marriage, had children with each marriage, and really, you know, really kind of liked this third wife, and really liked that she gave him a son that looked just like him, and really didn't want to lose this one. So he was willing, we got into to past prong reprocessing about once a month, but they're very defended, and you're lucky to get in there once a month. But yeah, I always say narcissists need a 12-step program because they need us to be that reality check. And he says, I think I'll stay married to her as long as I can keep seeing you.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I
that's why I need a 12-step program to refer him to.
and of course a real narcissist would need more than 12 steps. They would want at least a 13-step program.
They're special.
Yeah.
Yes.
You also mentioned that these clients often have a disturbance of self-organization. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. That formally came to be that term in 2018 when the World Health Organization, for the ICD-11, defined complex PTSD, something our DSM has failed to do. But the ICD-11 differentiated PTSD and complex PTSD. So, PTSD has the criteria of re experiencing the trauma event in the present, avoidance of traumatic reminders, and persistent sense um, of current threat, with arousal or hypervigilance. And then they added on these three criteria to differentiate. And they said that this cluster is called the disorganization of self. Um, and those three are affective dysregulation that can range from rage and outburst to dissociation and numbness, negative self concept, and enduring disturbance in relationships. And that's what we see with these folks that have survived narcissistic abuse. So we especially if you're an EMDR therapist, you're very familiar with complex PTSD, but thinking about it in those clusters, something I've also seen with this population is a lack of identity formation. So
Hmm.
often, especially if they've been raised by a narcissist or multiple narcissists, they become what I call these lovely empty vases. They are filled with what the narcissist wants to reflect, and they don't figure out who they want to be when they grow up. They are just who they need to be to survive that relationship and feel approved of, as which is as close as they're going to get to love. So that's what we see differently. So when you see that that cluster of presentation, I think we all know it as complex PTSD, but we
Right.
don't know it as the source. And what I like about calling it narcissistic abuse versus complex PTSD is it's non pathological. You have survived narcissistic abuse. You're not a complex PTSD. It,
Hmm.
it,
Yeah.
it, it shifts, which we do in EMDR and reprocessing, it shifts the responsibility. So it's not that you have attachment disorder. It's not that you're a borderline personality. It's you've survived narcissistic abuse. And that's why I like this umbrella term also.
You mentioned, and I'm going to mention it again, that you have some trainings coming up. Just so y'all know, we're taping this at the end of August 2024, and Candace is doing an in-person training on for survivors of narcissistic abuse um, in September, and a live virtual one in October. But don't worry if you're listening afterwards, because this will become an on-demand course. But Candace, why should a clinician take this training?
Yeah.
Good question. I think from my consultees, what I've learned over the years is that these folks can be very challenging. And the reason they're so challenging, and clinicians, EMDR clinicians, can kind of get lost in what I call the soup, is because they present with this mega cluster and a memory networks. They have so many memories. It's like, where do I start? We're just kind of lost in it. I'm not getting enough generalization. We're not moving along. They also, like the complex PTSD cluster talks about, they often have trouble with self-regulation. They're melting in their seats. They're numbing. They're dissociating. And they can also be those crisis of the week people, those people who
Hmm.
need to talk and feel heard and dump all their crises on you each time. And so, what I've learned from my consultees is that they say things to me like, I can't get started. I can't keep them on track. I don't know where we are. I feel like we're not making any progress. I'm not sure if EMDR is the right tool for them. I think they might just need talk therapy. And I say BS. You just don't know how to 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 kind of manage all of this. And so there's adaptations that I have honed over the years that I teach my consultees and I teach in this advanced training that I think I think, what I hear back from my consultees is they come back and they say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you taught me how to attack a mega cluster or how to deal with a talkative client or the crisis of the week people." Because you have to be much more fluid in your prongs. You have to be much more adaptable to meet them where they're at so they feel heard, but you can also get them into their work and move it along. It isn't a quick process either.
Right.
So you have to adjust your expectations of this EMDR client to know this is going to be a comprehensive, more long term client.
It does seem like this population could be easily misunderstood.
It's
Yeah.
like for all these EMDR clinicians, this is where we start talking about the art of EMDR therapy. And I think that's part of what you're teaching in your course.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And they are misunderstood. I was for years, I've been collecting memes by people who have survived narcissistic abuse. They're everywhere, and I actually found a scholarly article that addressed memes and survivors of narcissistic abuse because this is something that when they are amongst their peers, they feel heard and understood, where they don't by the not only by the general public but by our field. They aren't seen. They're often called borderline personality disorder or um, generalized anxiety disorder, or probably the one that gets me the most, that kind of gets my dander up, is dependent personality disorder. They're not dependent personality. That is a um, maladaptive coping pattern that they've had to use to survive their narcissist. So that's they the root of um, their maladaptive coping patterns are is the narcissistic abuse, and isn't seen and understood by clinicians.
Candace, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you so much for all the information you gave us. Thank you so much for doing this obviously very needed workshop.
Yes.
So really
Thank you for
appreciate
having
all
me.
of that.
Thank you.
As always, we will have a discount coupon just to thank all of you for listening. And Kurt.
Yeah, until next time, thank you all for listening. And once again, we'll be here for another EMDR chat with Kurt and Michelle. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, everybody.